WHO advised everyone get out. It was, no, we can't, we're staying. I was lucky to do geology at college at Runshaw here in the Northwest, and then took on geology at Kingston University in London. Kingston alumni with Eric Downey, actually. Not the same year, I'm sure he won't mind me saying, but yeah, same university. And I then did my master's in environmental management, still at Kingston. And then took a few years after my master's. I went to China for a few years teaching. I taught English and geography out there. And then I did my 3 years and knew I wanted to come back and start some kind of career in the geotechnical or geoenvironmental industry. And that's how actually I met yourself.
It was.
And then that's how I ended up working in ground investigation in the UK. So I've been in ground investigation now since February of this year. So I'm about to do my first full revolution of the sun. And that's where I'm up to as of today.
Excellent. Okay, so you mentioned a little bit there about what you've kind of done previously before getting into the ground investigation industry. So you've actually done quite a lot, really, in terms of sort of work experience, clubs, joining various organisations. I wonder if you could give me start back as early as you can. Obviously, I mean, you worked for a family company for a little while. You were a kitchen porter and resident support person for a Hazelbrook Christian nursing home. So I wonder if you could, maybe not the former, but maybe a little bit of the latter, working in the care
home. That was I think it was one of my first jobs. I was that wasn't sort of through nepotism. I worked in a pub just before that, and unfortunately the pub was bought out by Marston's. And then I just sort of done a bit of kitchen work while I was at college, and then I knew this position at the nursing home that my grandma was actually quite familiar with. It's a local one. So I worked in the kitchens in there for quite a few years then. It was mainly through college and then into university. Just sort of when I was back home, Christmas holidays, Easter holidays, summer holidays. And basically they kept me on doing the kitchen stuff when I was in uni, but then they also, because I was a little bit older, they wanted me to just kind of sit with the residents in the evenings and whatnot. Got to dress up as Santa for Christmas Day and give them presents and stuff. It was like a little community kind of thing, and it was quite fun because quite a few of the residents had last names that I was quite familiar with because I went to school with their grandkids. So it's one of them sort of tight-knit community kind of care homes. It was mainly just for the pocket money on the side,
You were a student intern, Ricardo Energy and Environment, for about 11 months. So that was pretty much the last year of your university. I don't know if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think it was a bit shorter than 11 months. Maybe I bit off a little bit too much there. It was because of Dr. Adam Reed, who now works at Suez. But he was one of the directors at the time for Ricardo's Energy Environment's waste management sector, and he came in doing one of those seminars, because I think he's a Kingston alumni too, and they got a few ex-Kingston students in doing talks about what work they were doing in sort of geographical industry, and he's quite a character if you ever do get to meet him. And we hit it off quite well, and he just gave me a card and was like, if you want an internship, drop me a call. So I didn't really know what an internship was. I know that sounds a little silly, but I just messaged the guy and I was like, let's do this, whatever this is. So I was on and off there once a week. Wasn't 11 months, it was a bit shorter than that, but it was for a considerable period, because I went there, I think he did 2 or 3 months, and then took a month off, and then came back and did a much longer stint. And that was good. Yeah, that was my first sort of eye-in on a working consultancy. And it was in Paddington, London, so it's quite cool.
Well, is that kind of what's inspired you to go ahead and, take on the Masters?
No, to be honest, it wasn't. I did it because I heard of what people were doing, and I felt like I should be doing something as well, other than just my degree. In a more personal note, no, the masters was because I finished university, and happy to admit I was terrified about what you're supposed to do after that. And Kingston offered a discount for anyone who stuck around to do a master's. So to me, it was like another year at university, and I got to specialize a bit more. I didn't do as well as I wanted to at undergrad. So doing a master's was like, it was a second chance, it's a second try. I knew who the lecturer was going to be. I knew what the course was going to be about. So I was just like, right, let's do another year of this. Let's actually, now I've done 3 years and I know how this works. I know how to play this game. Let's go in and do it. I did it, came out with a much better grade than I got at my undergrad. Very happy, to be honest. It was, but on the flip side of that, it was literally just putting off the inevitable at the end of the day. Like, the struggle was just literally put forwards 1 year. So it was a short-term fix, but I came out of it pretty good, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Lots of people at university, when I finished, also kind of took on a master's as well, and I think it's kind of put it off really to enter into the world of work. And I suppose once you start, entering into that world, you're either going to be successful or you're not. You're either going to get the role you're looking for, or you're going to struggle with it. So I suppose it does kind of be cool. But of course, on the other side, it can hone your skills, can give you more experience, etc. as well. So, and then can help you specialize in some aspect of
100%. And a lot of the people, particularly engineers that I've worked with since starting, very few of them have done masters. So it's certainly not needed to start. Obviously, each route helps. If you do the masters, you are going to have that extra year in the university. You might be able to hone that sort of academic side a little bit more, especially if you're good at it. If you're good at academia, like, why not stick on and do the extra year and come out with the extra degree? But on the flip side, maybe if I did it again, and I'm not the most academically aligned, I wouldn't have done it. And if I'd known that you could just go straight in on the bachelor's, with a bit of hindsight, maybe I would have made a different decision, but I certainly don't regret it.
Okay, so you said there about not being academically aligned. How did you struggle through the undergraduate course? How was your time at university?
Well, you got to go back a little bit more than that. I think it was at college. I just didn't do great at my A levels. God bless my geology teacher, Dr. Martin Rigby, still at Runshaw, actually. He's one of the headmasters now. That was the subject I really like, and that's the one I did the best in. But my other subjects, I gradually lost interest in them as the year progressed, and I didn't really revise as well as I probably could have done. Certainly with teaching for a few years, I know now I was making a lot of mistakes, a lot of procrastination. I just wasn't a very good student, and undergrad really sort of showed that to me, because at the end of undergrad I was quite disappointed, and it wasn't like an epiphany. I just I knew what I should have been doing. It's not like it was a revelation or I had some like wake up moment. I knew what I should have been doing, or should I say, I knew what I should not have been doing. And when I got to masters, I applied that and did the best that I've ever done. I happily got a merit. I was very close to a first.
Well done.
And for me, that was just, thanks. To me, that was like, I couldn't believe it. Very happy with that.
So the difference being, you think you just kind of knuckled down more for the masters?
Yeah, but I think that's a very generalized way of looking at it. I suppose another general statement, I matured a bit more. I knew what to expect. I knew how the work was. And also, I wasn't behind. I didn't have like previous grades sort of staring down the back of me going, oh, you messed up that module, so you're going to have to do better in this one. It was a complete fresh start, and it was only a 1 year stint. So rather than to sort of sidetrack a little bit, when you do your 3 years at your undergrad, your first year means very little. At least it meant for mine. Literally none of the grades you got was equable to your degree. It was just so you could pass into second year. So you kind of felt like, well, what was the point in that? Why not just do the bare minimum and just get in? And I think that mentality kind of soured me a little bit. But when I got to masters, it was like, no, you got 1 year to do this. Either do it or fall. I just had a better work ethic. The subject was more specialized. I liked the subject. I liked the teachers. The class sizes were smaller. Just lots of little adjustments that made it a better learning experience overall.
Sure, I see what you mean. Yeah, no, I think a lot of people at university, and me being one of them, the first year, I think it had some counting towards it, if I recall, but it was really kind of an introduction.
You did geology though, right?
Yes, yeah. Geology at the University of Leicester.
Yeah, it was like that. Yeah, it was more of an update because a lot of people hadn't done it at college, geology. Yeah. So that first year was to make sure everyone was on the same level before second year. Yeah,
that's right. A good sort of grounding. But it's I suppose it's the foundations. If you work not necessarily really hard, but if you really throw yourself into that, then the other steps can be easier. But like you say, sometimes you don't recognise these things really. So you passed your masters, and then you've taken a bit of a different turn, and you've gone over to Shanghai in China to become an English teacher. I wonder if you could tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, it's a hell of a detour. For myself, I don't think I quite appreciate how much of a detour it was. I'll be straight up honest. I didn't know how to get a job after uni. I know that sounds daft at the time. It was very serious. Applied through websites for companies I knew, and I wasn't applying for graduate positions. I didn't know that was a thing at the time, and whether that's my own ignorance, not paying attention or whatnot, likely is. But I was spending like an hour on an application, and then you get an automated email saying, you're being considered, talk to you in a month or so. And it's just crushing. You come back from uni, you've got this sort of maybe grandeur about you that you've done uni, you've done masters, you've done your 4 years, you've done this, other than a PhD, you've done like the next best thing. And then you've got to sit down and type out things like about yourself that maybe you don't quite believe in, and you've really got to stretch things to make certain boxes fit, and you've got to sit there and explain to someone why you, with no work experience, should take on a position. And I had a few interviews, and it just didn't get very far. I don't know. Maybe I'm just not very likable, but it's probably more down to you're a grad. You're not there. You're not what they want. And my mother had actually spent some time in Hong Kong back during the 80s because her uncle was in the Air Force there. So there was that kind of seed already kind of sown in the works. I had friends in Hong Kong. Just through going to university in London, you meet people from all over the place. And I had another friend who she used to travel around the world quite frequently. She had a crazy job. She worked in like I don't know how to say this polite, like a mental institute. And so she'd do like 6 months on, 6 months off, just for sheer got to get out and clear your head because of the stuff. And she used to travel around, and I thought it was amazing. I didn't know how somebody does that. I didn't know how you worked for 6 months and then traveled. It never occurred to me. And she was like, do this TEFL course, teaching English as a foreign language certification. And she says, if you do the big one, lots of places snap you up as an English teacher. So I kind of had it in my head that this could be a good fallback. So the summer prior to finishing university, I did this TEFL. And as with more sort of low cost online kind of learning things, you kind of fly through it if you put in any sort of effort into it, you're going to get through it pretty easily. I got the certificate, put it on LinkedIn, just to fluff my CV out a little bit. And then it was like November, I just got a message from a recruitment company in Shanghai, like, you want to come over? And at first, I was thinking this has actually happened. Am I doing this? Nah, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to get a job. And then Christmas passed, and then it just dawned on me, all right, you're not getting this job. Go and do this instead. And I'll be honest, I was a bit of a homeboy, never really left Europe. So this just felt right. Let's do it. Got the visa all in process and went out there March of 2019. And
it's brave.
That's how that came about.
Take some bravery to go out there and start out in a tiny different sort of career? I'd imagine you've been by yourself initially, of course, and I imagine you'd have made friends, etc., whilst you were there. But how was it dealing with the transition from perhaps living in the UK to, to going over there and living in Shanghai, starting to teach something which you didn't have a huge amount of experience in, or any, if I were to say that?
Oh, no, you can definitely say that. I didn't have any teaching experience. I had a pen pal in university from Vietnam. But that's kind of it in terms of teaching. Just coming back, brave. I wouldn't say it was brave. It was more desperation than bravery. It was not something I wanted to do at the time. And for those reasons, really, well, you know it yourself. You lived abroad, very similar country for a very long time. So obviously, not to compare, you took your family with you, which I can imagine is good for company, but also brings up much higher levels of responsibility. So it's the culture shock, really. It's the things that just you're looking at it and you can't explain it.
Definitely. It's a very different world. It is.
We have a lot in common. Obviously, we have a lot in common, but the differences will never cease to surprise you. Right? Mm-hmm. And you think you've got them all, and then suddenly you're like, oh, well, there's another one.
Yeah.
What's that? It's China. That's what it is. It certainly can be lonely, though. I must admit, it's hard.
How did you deal with that loneliness?
Refuse to acknowledge it.
Yeah.
You just get stuck in. What's going on? Football match? I hate football. Let's go. It's got to come to it. And just be okay with being the new guy at stuff. So I did some really cool stuff. I must admit, I joined this archery tag team. It was great. It was like a dodgeball with bows and arrows. And just a nuts game. But I found out it was on. I was like, I'm going to that. And I joined it. And mixed Chinese people, foreign people all over the place, girls, boys. And it was a great little crew. Just something to do on the weekends. I got quite friendly with my work colleagues, one of which I'm still great mates with, Sandro. He worked as a teacher to have the visa, but on the side he was a football headhunter for Chinese teams to get Brazilian players into China, and he was doing that on the side. And you just meet these kind of like entrepreneurial people who are doing all these little side hustles of various things. I joined a boxing group. Who the coach was from Barnsley. So all my Northerners are listening. It was just nuts. There's this Barnsley boxer in Shanghai. And it was a great group though. We had Chileans, Italians, a few Chinese, a lot of Brits. And you just refuse to be lonely. Go and do stuff. And so even if you don't really want to do it, go and do it. So then when you get home that evening, you don't feel terrible for being on your own. You actually appreciate the lone time, so to speak.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, because sometimes we put things off we don't do, but then at the end of the day, if you haven't pushed yourself or tested yourself at all that day and you haven't done anything of worth, I mean, unless you've been working hard previous to that, like maybe on the weekend you want to relax, but it comes back at you, doesn't it? I think
100%. And you know when you've not done something that you probably should have done.
Yes.
You always have that sort of demon in the back of your mind telling you, you didn't do it. You should have done.
And then it makes you feel worse.
Yeah. Right.
So then you've gone to sort of learning education, moved on from Happy Gone, and you've taken on a bit of a different role there. And whilst you were there, obviously World Health Organization and the UK government advised UK citizens to leave, but you decided to stick around. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was, well, you see, COVID for me didn't start in March of 2020. It started in October 2019 because I was working on learning. It was my first year at the second school I went to. And my students they weren't turning up for classes. Some of them are coming. These were quite young students, so it's the parents weren't there, and there'd be absences all the time. And I was asking the Chinese staff, what's going on? And they said, oh, there's this virus, people are getting sick, so everyone's staying at home. Okay. Is this a big thing?
Yeah.
And everyone, no, it's not really. It's going to be fine. So I planned a trip home in January to see the parents and the family. It'd been a year since I've been out, so it was time to go and pay a visit. And I flew back with my, at the time, girlfriend. She's now my wife. And we were in the UK. It was her first time in the UK. She's from Russia. So she'd never been to the UK before. And we were sort of having a good time. We went to visit York and whatnot. And I remember sitting in Wetherspoons in York, and we got a text message. We both got text messages saying schools are closed, don't come to school, stay at home. It's because of COVID. And we thought, wow, like the schools are closed. Like, where's this going? And then article after article was coming up on our Chinese social media saying this is closed, that is closed. Government saying stay at home. Meanwhile, the UK was just going about its business. And I remember talking to my parents, and they were like, don't go back. Stay here. We don't know how this is going to go. And we thought, well, I can't. All my stuff's in China. My job's in China. Like my girlfriend's stuff was in China. She only had a holiday visa for the UK. We got to get back. And so we did go back, and we got back, and 2 weeks later, they closed the border for 8 months.
Wow.
And they locked out everyone. They locked in everyone, but China's a big country. You could still move around, and Shanghai is a very big city. So, yeah, we were at home. WHO advised everyone get out. It was, no, we can't. We're staying. All the classes moved online. We just worked off our computers, and it was great. Loads of the parents lost faith in the schools because they weren't so prepared to transfer online, so the material wasn't ready. So there's parents getting the money back, and they wanted to get private teaching. And obviously I had a lot of free time, so we worked, and we did great with the money and with the job and with the time. We never had nothing to do. And so we were locked inside the world's biggest prison, that being China. And well, you couldn't leave, and you couldn't get in. So. Yeah. But you had everything you needed. You had employment. You had all the restaurants were still just about open, but all the Chinese didn't go out. They stayed at home. It was only us rebellious foreigners that were on the street. And I remember riding my bike through Shanghai, essentially what you would call like Westminster of Shanghai. I was just on a bike, like riding through the center city. There's nobody about. It was like that scene in 28 Days Later when Cillian Murphy wakes up and it's just empty London. And that's what it's like. It was just me and my girl riding bikes around this empty city, and no one bothered us. No one cared. And then it'd go to a restaurant, and we were the only ones in there, and they were more than happy to take our money because nobody was coming in. It was a very surreal few months, to be honest.
Yeah, no, it was. I remember obviously in the UK. I think I'd be, like one of the only people on the road. I think this is insane, and everyone was staying in because we're all told to stay in. Meanwhile, other people in various organisations were kind of going out. But so it gave you a chance to sort of help develop from the in-person teaching to develop some sort of courses online then for the students and start to develop, to deliver education in a slightly different way.
Yeah, it's obviously. China's quite technologically up there. They're very savvy. Like even the young kids, the older folks, I'd say even more than the UK, they're quite tech savvy. All the seniors, they all have WeChat, which is like the Chinese social media, and they all know how to use it very well. So the transition to online was quite easy for them. It was mainly sort of the age of the students who were sort of 5-6 years old at the time. Like they didn't really understand that the screen in front of them with teacher going, look at me. It's not TV. they're talking to you, literally you, and they can see you. So when you're sitting there picking your nose or head on the table, I can see what you're doing. And obviously they're like 6, so they've no understanding of that. So it did take a while to transition to the online, and I can't say it was very fun, particularly for myself. I did struggle to be sort of patient with that one. And I was kind of losing a little enthusiasm for teaching English. I'm not the best English speaker or writer myself, so it felt a little. It was starting to feel a little imposter syndrome was sort of the kick in.
Oh, okay.
Which is why I in the end, I eventually decided to leave and teach geography instead.
Sure. No, I remember from my two children trying to sit at home, do online learning. It kind of can be difficult enough in school, but it's a very different. It's a different problems to deal with when you're out of school. One would be, motivation, the kind of the desire to keep going, and the frustration from having to teach online. And of course, some kids would just turn the camera off and not want anything to do with that, keep it on. But yes, and then, we allowed out an hour. If you're out any later, the government was telling people to tattletale on each other. So it was quite a sad time in humanity, really, the whole thing. Got into geography after that then, which now you pull in some resources back from your university education at this point now. So did that help you with the imposter syndrome?
It made me feel more comfortable because I actually knew what I was talking about. Well, I like to think I did. And it felt more related to my degree because I always knew China wasn't going to be a forever job. Some people settle in there, some people don't. I didn't. No judgment on those people who did. It's just that was for me. So it was me essentially clawing my way back towards relevance to my degree. And it was good. I enjoyed it. It was fun. I got to talk about the bits I like. Less focus on the English, more focus on the content.
Sure. And then if you've gone on to the Shanghai United International School, and while you're there, you've actually had to sort of create your own textbooks as well.
Yeah, I did that during my summer. I got the job at that school, and they previously had a geography teacher, and he couldn't get back into the country because when they unlocked the border, they locked it down again a couple of months after, and he couldn't get back in. And I had the feeling they kind of wanted to maybe get rid of him anyway. And they had textbooks that they weren't allowed to use because the Chinese government didn't approve of them. So it was either buy one that is approved, which there wasn't one, or make your own. And so I just took it on myself, made my own for grade 6 and grade 8. It took me about 2 months. It was a lot of work, but it made classes much easier because it was essentially, that was my lesson plan. So during most afternoons and evenings when teachers had a bit of time off, they'd make lesson plans. I already knew what was coming up because I wrote the book, literally. So I do like saying that. Just to toot my own trumpet a little bit. It's really
That's
fun.
it. I am the authority on this.
Yeah. And it was great. So I was the head of the department, which was good. I was working with this Swiss teacher who taught history. So it was me and him kind of working on the humanities department. And we had the help of this American teacher who was very well versed in IELTS, the sort of big English exam around the world. And he'd help us with the English part to make sure that we were sort of feeding a little bit of English into our classes. And then myself and the history teacher would kind of design our courses around that. So it was good. It was a nice sort of tight little 3-man team that helped out big time.
And so is this something that they're still continuing to use? Is that something you left there as a sort of legacy of your presence there?
Yeah. I passed on all the books. It was kind of like relinquishing my responsibility on them, so to speak. And it was sort of like a parting gift because I left after 6 months, which the school was a bit disappointed at, but it was just my time to go. So as a sort of a consolation prize, I did give them the books and the PDFs and the editable copies and the rights to use them. So they served my purpose. They made the 6 months I had teaching at that school very easy. And the kids really liked the books. So it was a win-win, and it was a good experience for myself and fun to look back on.
During that latter stage, then you joined the American Association of Petroleum Geologists as an operations support manager.
Yeah, it was that was a bit of the Kingston Mafia kind of striking back at the world.
Nice.
The AAPG had actually been in contact with me before because I helped set up the chapter at Kingston University with a fellow student, Liam O'Flynn. And we set up this chapter. And unfortunately, geology at Kingston is no longer a course. Very disappointing. It's got a very long history of that. And it's very sad that's happened, given the sort of prestige and reverence for geology that Kingston's had. But it is the world we live in today. So unfortunately, the chapter's gone. But I knew two classmates who were part of the Young Professionals chapter, Imran Ali and Christian Avalos. Imran is now actually president of the European chapter. And so I knew who they were and I knew what they did. And it was just, again, it was like another little sort of tendril back into the sort of geological world. And they were always looking for volunteers to sort of help out in the group, whether that be posting graduate job positions, helping with newsletters, organizing events, etc., etc. So I just, reached out. I said, I'm currently in China, but I am looking at coming back and getting stuck into some kind of geological industry. How can I help? They were very happy to take me on. They just didn't really have a role for me to do. So I was, as in the list above, I was just helping out with those things and contributing wherever I could. Only recently just left the group, actually. Just It served its purpose. It helped me get a job, and I feel like I did a year and a bit service with them, and I hope I gave back what I put in. I'm very proud of that time, though, and I'm very thankful for what they gave me.
It's kind of steering you back to where you've eventually joined as a geotechnical engineer. But there's one other thing I'd like to talk to you about before we sort of go into that, which was you're still, I think, currently a popcorn house with a popcorn club. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah.
Quite interested.
Popcorn Club. Yeah, Popcorn Club is run by one of my favorite people. That's Davey, who's this Canadian fellow who lives in Shanghai, and he owns Popcorn Club, which is an English social group for Chinese people. They pay like a monthly subscription, and they can come to his office where it's got some presentation rooms and take part in discussions hosted by foreign hosts on various different topics. And Davey's always had this great open book policy where it's like, I will not say no. If you want to do a topic on anything, you can do it. So I did topics on scary paintings. I did topics on the Isle of Man TT. I did topics on metal music, punk music, Rick and Morty. I did the Snowman on Christmas. I did Doctor Who on Christmas. I did all sorts of different topics, and it was really fun. And I still do it over here in the UK online, talking about travel. In fact, one of my most popular clubs was on Chinese demographics, because it was part of what I was teaching at the schools, and I used the same lessons from my time at the college when I was teaching, and those were sort of college grade lessons augmented with a little bit of university grade. So they were mature, you know. These weren't geography classes for 8-year-olds. These were geography classes for like 18-year-olds. So very mature kind of content, and they loved it. They lapped it up, and we had some great discussions. And Davey always said the best clubs are the ones where the last hour you sort of sit back and the clubbers, the people come in, they talk, they lead the discussion, they argue, they agree, and you just sit there and let them do it. And it was a good environment. Davey's salt of the earth guy. He's absolutely perfect in handling it. And he's put together this lovely little, it's not even little anymore. There's 500 people in Popcorn Club now. It's a good group. It's a great little business he's put together with a good range of hosts, from scuba divers to cocktail makers to linguists to geotechnical engineers. So the works. And I think it is the future. And so, something like that could be done in this country, I think, for other languages, if it's not being done already.
So that's entirely online, is it? So do you still sort of give presentations online from here?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Use Tencent, which is Chinese Zoom.
Yeah. And then you just all kind of log in, you would give the presentation, then there'd be kind of some debate or conversation. It sounds really interesting. How do you kind of sign up to have a look at that yourself?
Well, if you wanted to do it, you need some of the Chinese sort of software, particularly WeChat, mainly for communication. If you really wanted to do it, you just contact Davey at Popcorn Club. And if he likes you, which I'm sure he would, you just get stuck in on that, and he'd set you up. He'd help you get it sorted out. The pay's generous, and he's always on time with it. There's no big company or firm you're dealing with. It's just straight. The biggest setback would be you'd need a Chinese bank account, and hopefully you're paying taxes on that income. So that would be sort of your obstacles to traverse. But if you wanted to do it, no reason you couldn't.
Yeah, that'd be quite interesting. Maybe not presenting, but sort of being one of them there if you can do it on that side as well. But yeah, that'd be quite interesting to learn about different topics, different people's different opinions of these things. It's never going to be a bad thing. It's kind of like scrolling through maybe a Joe Rogan podcast, and it's got completely different, guests on a completely different subjects, listening to half an hour occasionally, and you could learn things essentially. So I mean, that's a great sort of thing.
Yeah, no, it does have that sort of kind of like what you're doing with this podcast. It's a very sort of 21st century way of doing media, this long form discussion. I mean, I know we only do the hour, and Joe Rogan's a bad example because he's literally the guy when it comes to this stuff, isn't it? But like the sort of 3 hour format, people love it. Some of the longer ones are 4 or 5 hours, So, and people love it. Yes. And it turns out we're not as stupid as everyone thought we were. We don't need the.
So then you have kind of got your first job in ground investigations of an SME geotechnical.
Yeah. Thank you to a certain someone.
Oh, thank you very much. So
gotta get your plug in there, Michael.
So you're mentioning about your applying direct, you're getting, an instant reply, come back within a month. Some companies will, especially the larger one, they'll come back and they'll say, if we're too busy, we won't come back to you at all, but thanks for your effort. And when you go and taper your CV, which you should do to each role that you apply for, that is quite a devastating thing to have to endure.
Crushing.
When I was at university. You chose to go through us. We actually had conversations for a fair few months really, prior to you even coming back to the UK. So we were all prepped, knew each other well, and then of course we placed you into the company you're with now. Yeah,
no, I would honestly tell any graduates going out there, it's kind of comes down to that work smart, not hard. If you can go and apply for 100 jobs a day if you want to, but they're either going to be those one-click quick applies, which I really don't know if they work. As a recruiter, I can imagine you do. Or you can do the long form, do an essay on a time you took leadership, or do an essay on a time you learned a lesson or something. You can do that. If you can do that to the level that will get you a job, you go and do that. But if you're like me and can't do that and get dismayed after spending 3 hours on application to receive an automated reply, go and get recruiters like Michael to do it for you, because you can do other things while you're doing it. And I met you actually through Christian, who works with IFRE PG. And we spoke for a bit. I told you when I was coming back, you said, keep working until then, contact me a few months before you're back and you're ready to start. Let's go from there. We did it. We got the interview. We got the job. Everybody won. It was a happy day. So find what works best for you. But I believe for a lot of people, getting someone to go and look for you, especially for your first role, I think it's tremendous in terms of what it can do for you.
Yeah, it is. So when you go to a kind of recruitment company, they can highlight the things that are perhaps not on your CV as well as that, but they also would have the ear of the directors. We have many companies and people, whether it be contract managers, whoever it is, that we can pick up the phone to, send your details over and get, kind of a provisional answer by the following day, really. And when I see a CV, when I talk to a candidate, I know straight away where they're likely to be going, where they're likely to be accepted for. So it really is a shortcut. I couldn't think of anything worse from my own experience of tapering the CVs, because there's nothing worse, because it takes a lot of time and effort. And of course, we ask people to do it for the particular companies, but just the time and effort, the larger the company you apply to, the more likely it is that you're going to get either no response, or it's going to take 2 or 3 weeks for them to come back to you if they do, which is not, it's just not good enough. Because what do you do in that time? How do you know that you're even getting anywhere? You're still holding out hope. Hopefully you're getting here, or hopefully you're getting there. And it's kind of, when they're good and ready, they can kind of get back to yourselves. But I suppose to defend their position in a way, you said about the one-click applies, and my God, that's an awful thing, one-click apply. You might as well.
But it feels good though, doesn't it? It feels good as a student. Yeah, you feel like you've done something. Yeah.
I've used it before, and I've sent out sort of 30, 40 just when I was starting as an engineer geologist. Staff I'm not even anywhere near qualified for, more senior roles. It'd be a total waste of time for them to even give me a call and tell me, no, you're not qualified for this. On another note, we have, looking for someone for quite a senior role, and because it's kind of a keyword, which is an operations manager, we've had about 50, 60 applications, and not a single one has been appropriate. Not anywhere near. So because they have the same title, operations manager, completely random, completely different industry. They don't know what a rig is. They don't know anything about ground investigations. Obviously everyone can learn.
Straight in.
But someone's not looking for someone to learn from scratch at that level. They're looking for them to come straight in and know exactly what they're doing and add value to the business. So, yeah, it can definitely be quite annoying. But like I say, so you leverage your network really through Chris.
Yeah.
So networks are important also,
and they take time to build. It's not easy to do, but it's okay. You can do that. That's kind of what the software is there for.
That's very useful. The likes of LinkedIn, for instance, very powerful tool for things like that. It's something which I've utilised personally extensively now. Never thought I would, to be honest, but it's become so big. Really, actually, it's just a huge asset now, essentially. So it really kind of is worth using what you can, essentially, to get ahead, make yourself known, and of course pick up the phone to us, because we can shortcut the whole thing. So now you've been working with the geotechnical contractor. How has that gone so far? What have you learned? What are you kind of?
Well, I'll start by saying, to caveat, I'm not coming into the industry to tell all the bad sides about it and how I think we should fix it all. So I'm gonna stay on the positives, really, because I do have a lot of respect and reverence for British geology, because we've got a long history, very successful at doing it. So I'll stay on the constructive side, and we'll start with I would say, things to be aware of. I'm not going to say these are bad things. I'm saying if you're coming into the industry, be aware that these things exist. And what I'd say is cold and wet weather. Particularly last week, it was very cold. Our compressors froze, bits on the rigs froze, my cat froze. It wouldn't. I had to heat it in my footwell to get it working again. So if you're not into the cold or wet weather, you're not going to have fun. It's not an office-based job. It's primarily you're out in the field. You just got to get on with it. No one likes getting cold and wet. But to state the obvious, it's not nice. Be aware of that before you jump in. The long hours as well. You've had quite a few people on who talked quite extensively about the hours of work. Mark Lindall's a standout for that. It's a job where it requires you're on site. Our site hours are generally 8 till 6. You're not always doing that, but you are expected to do that should it come up. With the nights getting darker now, obviously, unless you've got lights and it's dark by 4 o'clock. So you need to be ready for those longer shifts. It's not a 9 till 5 job. You're not going to be home at the same time every day. Some days you might get home early. Some days you might get home very late. So again, be aware that that's what you're signing on to. It's not necessarily a negative. It's just be aware of it.
Just the reality.
I suppose on that note, you also could be working far from home. Now, I love the travel side of it, and I'll come on to that in a minute. But you often work far from home. So if you have those responsibilities, or if you're more inclined that you want to spend more time at home, again, it's no judgment on either. I understand both sides. You, again, be aware of that you would be expected to work from home, away from home, for prolonged periods of time. Another one, there's no hiding it. It's a male dominated industry. Dominate, I don't like that word, but it's a male predominant industry.
Yes.
And I'm not here to pass judgment on whether that's a good thing, bad thing, whether that needs changing. It is changing. I don't think that's a controversial thing to state. There are now more. I've worked with female engineers. I've worked with female project managers. I've not yet worked with a female driller, but that's not to say they're not out there. And with that kind of male industry, again, being aware of it, it comes with that, I'd say, aggressive banter on site, and whether or not you can keep up with that. If you can take it, can you give it? And it's not to say that women couldn't deal with that. It's not to say that all men are like that. It's just, it comes with that role. So again, make a judgment on your own personal, am I okay with that?
Yeah.
But be aware of it before you come onto a construction site. And I'd say to close on the kind of the things that to be aware of, if you're going into ground investigation to become a site supervisor, it's in the name, supervisor. You're in a leadership role. You're in a role of responsibility. That means quite often you're the first on site, last to leave. You're in charge of the keys. You're in charge of locking up. You're in charge of inducting the guys. You make the final decision at the end of the day because you're the one on site. If you think something's dangerous, it's your job to speak up. It's not the person sitting in the office who's your project manager. They can give you advice, obviously, and you should listen to them. But at the end of the day, your name's on that dotted line on the permit to dig. You're the one who HSE is going to want to talk to if you're allowing your workers to be silly on site. So again, be conscious that, am I comfortable with making that decision? And it's very rarely that something, I mean, I'm only talking from my experience, that sometimes you have to make that decision. But I've had to do it where I've gone, I'm not doing that. It's dangerous. You need people to come down here and have a look at this, and we need to think of a better way of doing this. So be conscious that you are expected to make these decisions. And if you are not of the individual, if you're not naturally talented, or not talented, but inclined to speak up, then maybe, again, it's not for you. But if all those things don't bother you, you're going to have a hell of a time, because there's a lot of good things that come out of this job. Travel, I've seen so much of the UK now. My UK geography is much better, and my UK geology is much better too. We've done jobs in Wales, we've done jobs in we got one in Torquay. It was great. I've done it. I've worked in Newcastle. You get around quite a bit with it, and you get to be that supervisor. You get to make those decisions. You get to decide how the project goes out. Again, you've got the project manager, and you might have a director above you who's sort of dictating when and where you go and what's going to happen. But at the end of the day, are the little smaller nuances you're in charge of, and I really enjoy that. It's quite fun. The varied geology, again, is quite good. You're kind of getting on the joke that South Wales is a pain to drill, and down south of England, you've got your chalks, and up the high, you've got the coal seams, and you gradually sort of piece together your own little patchwork quilt of where you've worked and what the geology was like at different places. And I suppose the last one is, it's quite cliche, but you are making a difference in some way. Now, the more nihilistic of you might say it's just a job and nobody really cares, but you are building a better UK, a better country, a better world. You're upholding good practice. You're looking after key environments. You're looking after ecosystems. You're putting foundations in for buildings that people are going to live in, and you doing your job well means those buildings are going to be sound, and you are discovering new geology as you go in, and you're making a positive contribution in my eyes. And it does feel good when you see someone. I suppose this works in a lot of industries. You can say, I worked there, I worked on that. And I think it was it might have been Scarlett, who was previously on your podcast, was saying something like, I'd done that, I was part of that. And that is a good little bit of inside pride at your work, which I think is very healthy to have.
Yeah, it is, because once you see perhaps the larger structures, which maybe the civil engineers get to have more involvement with, but I suppose you can think, well, if they didn't have a proper ground investigation, maybe it wouldn't be there, or maybe they'd be redoing it in 5 years' time at a huge cost, and potential sort of safety.
And we go to those jobs.
Yeah.
We go to those jobs where they didn't do it, or they cheaped on it, or maybe they didn't get what they wanted, but they still went ahead anyway. And you go there and you see the effects, and you want to see the price. It makes your eyes water. So, yeah, good ground investigation is good for everybody.
Yeah, it certainly is. You either pay now or pay later, I think they say. So you mentioned some of the half sides of ground investigations. Winter, trying to log a trial pit, write on some bulk bag labels. It's raining, your pen's not working, terrible. Your photo board. It can be quite harsh. I know that luckily I don't think it lasts that long. If it was like that every day, all day, I don't think anyone would get into it. Only the hardest of the hardest, I think, would ever bother.
Well, it was like when Eric was talking about Kazakhstan at -40. I was outside in -6 listening to that, and I'm so soft. Why am I complaining at -6? The dude's eyelids were freezing up.
Yes, exactly. No, that's it.
So yeah, it's as hardcore as you want it to be, I think.
Yeah, it is, and equally, in the summer, or when it's extremely hot in the UK, when it occasionally is, watching drillers dig the inspections pit. And in Chalk, I think it was, and it could only manage sort of 2 or 3 days because the specification of the job, you had to have full head to toe flame retardant things, or so we're kind of dying really to keep up with those standards. You have to almost kind of do yourself in really. But that was what was required, and that was a HS2 job, because of course if it does go the other way, then you can really rely on those flame retardant overalls which we were wearing at the time. So you mentioned about it, predominantly being males in the industry, which is definitely true. I think more and more women are coming into the industry, and rightly so. I would hope that perhaps that can increase over time. But I feel as if, there is equal opportunity, in my opinion, here. So, I mean, for instance, at university, there's plenty of females or women, whatever it sounds even odd to even describe people as kind of their gender, really. But, whoever wants to go into it can go into it, whether I think whatever gender, race, religion, whatever it is, you can always get into investigations yourself. There are some people on site who would be not ideal to kind of work with, but I think that's more necessarily about the character of that person rather than, of course, the industry or anything like that.
Definitely. It's definitely more down to your disposition rather than sort of anything physical about you. And I'm not the most physically built male specimen. I certainly couldn't dig hand pits all day. I happily admit that. But I'm good at other things. So it's like that with everybody. Everyone's got their strengths and weaknesses, and it is an industry that's changing. Like much of the construction world, it's changing. And of course there's things that can be done better. I'm actually currently on site with a female engineer, and she mentioned PPE being made in male sizes only. And I understand the sort of marketing side of that. If you're a company, you want to sell the most amount of your products, and so the most people who work in construction are males, so you're going to make that male PPE. But it is what you could say like an emerging economy, this sort of female PPE. Why isn't that more of a thing? You don't notice that? I'd say that's positive change.
I would agree. I've seen a couple of people on LinkedIn primarily who have kind of started to develop a clothing company around that, and I think it's a great idea. PPE for myself, sure. I mean, has it ever really? It's never really fitted. Even when you used to maybe get some medium trousers, medium jacket, it's always clunky. They're never well made, are they? I don't think, unless you go really top tier, quality. Which, let's be honest, when you're working for the company is not going to want to get the very, very best. You might buy the very best for yourself, perhaps if you're a contractor occasionally, but I don't. Most of it wouldn't be that. But yeah, in terms of size, I mean, even small for say a small petite woman is going to be far too big. And that's before we even get onto the boots. Boots, and
most important part of your PPE, I think, your boots.
I was on site with a geotechnical contractor, and they were kind of new boots, and once you kind of worn in for a couple of weeks, they were so bad. They weren't that cheap either. But all the kind of it can be a pain essentially to wear these clunky, ill-fitting clothes, boots.
No, I wouldn't want that personally. But yeah, boots is definitely a good one. If you're getting into the industry, get yourself a good pair of boots, or at least make sure your company gets you a good pair of boots.
Yes, don't skip
and wellies.
Boots. Yeah, definitely. So since in your time at your company, so you've done some of the land-based geotechnical work. You've started to get into some of the rails. You've done some night shifts. You've done the occasional weekend, and you're doing a bit of office training. Could you just give us a sort of rundown of all that?
Yeah, I want to just get myself really stuck in with everything. I'm not. I don't like being the new guy. I don't like not knowing stuff. So I want to get stuck in there. I want to say I've done those night shifts, and you do feel like you know more of the job the more you expose yourself to it. You get out what you put in. Yeah. So at rail work, there was an opportunity to do PTS training. So yeah, I'll do it. Why not? Did the training, did the online. It's very extensive, and I can't remember who was saying it. One of your previous guests was saying the rail industry has their own language, and that is 100% true. I think it might have been Patrick who was saying that actually.
Yes, it was.
And it's true, yeah. They're all talking stuff, and you just everything's acronyms and whatnot. So it's a very interesting industry, and obviously when you're out on that night shift, at the beginning it's quite novel, it's quite exciting, and I still think it has that kind of little bit of excitement going out and doing the night shift. And obviously it pays very well. Can't argue with that one. Always love a bit of double time, don't we? So whether it's on night shift on the day or night shift on the weekend, it's always good to go and do. Working in the office, learning how to do the factory reports, learning how the RAMs work, the risk assessment method statements, how they're constructed, how they're produced, how they're assessed, method statements, cost assessments, all that. Learning how your folder is actually put together before your job is obviously quite, I'd say, important. And it's given me a new appreciation for it. The amount of times towards the beginning where I was like, here's a question, a project manager saying, did you look in the folder? And my answer is always, no, probably should do that. But when you're part of making them, you begin to understand where things are. And yeah, you feel a bit more comfortable flicking through all those pages. And sort of training, I'm quite thankful my company's put me through to do BESC, so I can work in the substations. So any string to my bow, any feather in my hat, I'm more than happy to take it. Which I think I appreciate. Not everyone can be like that. I am just glad that I'm like that, and I find it interesting being able to dabble in lots of different areas to some decency and professionality.
Yeah, I know what I mean. It keeps it alive if you can do sort of various training courses on various different sites as well. So you're saying about the substation one in rail, so they're often quite steeped in procedures, paperwork. If you don't have this signature here, even though everyone's there and it's going to cost the company a lot of money, I don't have the signature there, so that's
You're going on, mate. I appreciate you just drove 2 hours at midnight to come here, but bye-bye. Yeah. And it happens. It happens. I saw a job where 20 guys got sent home because there was no cause for them. There was no control of site safety to go on the rail. So yeah, everyone goes home. I've seen
it. It is a pain, but
it's an expensive mistake.
But I have to be honest. I was sent to be an engineer job on a substation before. We got there 8 a.m. Travelled a great distance to get there, and says, "Oh, don't have the right signature. See you tomorrow." I says, "Goodbye." I'm out. It happens. See you later.
But joking aside, when I told my grandmother that I was going to go and work on rail, she pulled out a photograph. My grandma's great with photographs. And it's a photograph of my granddad, and he's my age working on the railway. And I'm from Horwich, which, if you know anything about Horwich, it's very famous for its railway production work and whatnot during the 20th century. And my granddad was part of that. And you see, these boys, they don't have PPE, they don't have hard hats, they don't have jackets, they don't have gloves, they don't have boots, they've just got whatever they turned up in. And it must have been terrifying to think, like, how many of those lads weren't coming home in the evening. And as much as I'm not really a fan of big companies with cheesy slogans, that Network Rail, everyone home every day. When you see a train whiz past you 3 meters away going 100 something miles an hour, you are humbled. And if you're not humbled, you need to get off that railway right now because you're not the right person for it. And like the older I've got and the more responsibility I've got, particularly with my wife, and I feel responsible. I need to get home every day. Like, this is non-negotiable. So as much as we joke and we laugh when the procedures don't quite work out, they are there for a very good reason, because even today, there's too many lads and ladies dying on that railway when it doesn't have to be like that.
No, it's a valid point. And you think the health and safety is better now than it's ever been, and obviously in the future it will hopefully be better than it is now. And people are working on that all the time, and sort of new codes and standards to make that happen. But when you go back, say, however many years, and you see some of the mining, and I remember we were down on a trip for university. It was a tin mine, and you had these kind of really narrow passages. And they would just sort of be attacking a seam, essentially, kind of like a pickaxe, hard rock, and using explosives. And then he says to them, like, this is too unsafe. Do you mind if we just chip a bit out of here so we can at least hide around the corner when the stuff has exploded out past us? And you're like, that's crazy. So, it's an important point. Health and safety is extremely important. And it can be, it is a dangerous environment to work in ground investigation.
It is. It's not nothing to do with can be. 100%. When you see like even a small trial pit, 5 meter trial pit, just collapse, the sound, the thud, it's like Jurassic Park, cup of water shake. It's unsettling. It's nerve wracking.
It can be scary. I remember sort of doing trial pits in a highly vegetated area, should we say, for a wind farm in Lockerbie. And I kind of didn't like it when it got to the depths, when it got to 3.5, 4 meters, and you go around taking pictures with a photo board, and there was vegetation overlapping, and occasionally you kind of trip. Luckily, you would never go down, but it does happen. I don't think it's
fingers crossed. Yeah, touch wood.
But it's so dangerous because you're working at height there, aren't you? And
well, you don't realise that because you literally stood on the ground.
So, sometimes it does feel as if this seems almost too dangerous to do. But I know that you get some very good data, and you get some really great stuff for samples, which is very useful, and it's quite a cheap method when compared to sort of drilling in various forms. So it is something. I know there are people, health and safety wise, out there who would like it just stopped. Whether or not that will happen, who knows? At some stage, we'll have to wait and see. But best practice, health and safety. Following procedures, having your Harris fencing up, making sure people got the hard hat and the glasses on, etc. Because the time you leave them off, something happens, whether that's just mud, gone into your eye, because that could be quite bad as well, if that's ever happened. So, it's very important, and over time, I'm sure it will be improved even more so than it has been so far.
It's your ears, I think. That's a good one, like, especially when you're doing things like dynamic probing, or just SPTs or dynamic sampling. It's your ears. That gets very loud, and I do appreciate it when my drillers shout out ears, and you got that 1.25 seconds to quickly throw down your earmuffs over your ears. But I'll take any warning because it's not nice, and I really don't want to think what damage that'll do to your health if you don't look after yourself.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of irreversible as well. Once an SPT starts coming around, if you don't happen to have the clip-on one,
don't be standing next to that.
Stick it straight on, because you can only withstand a couple of them before you've probably gained some sort of irreversible damage already. So what's kind of
in a cheeky
project?
Way? My favourite project. I'll answer that one. I like that one. It's currently the one I'm on now. I'm working outside a prison in Leicestershire. And we got 4 rigs on the go, 30 outside the prison. We've got 4 rigs on the go. It's great. We got enough engineers on site. Everyone's looking after a rig, and I've kind of been given the rein to organise it, to organise collections, deliveries, environmental collections, welfare, upkeep, skips, things like that. I help out the other engineers with the logs and stuff. And even though it has been like -7 and things are freezing up, it's a good atmosphere all in it together kind of thing. And it is quite exciting. It's quite fun to be going out each day, and everyone's got their own little job, and it's hands down been my favourite job. It's horribly cold, and there have been things going wrong. We've had delays with drillers getting frozen up in Scotland, and they're due to come down on Monday and things like that. But Quite a few of the drillers I've worked with before, and the engineers, obviously, I've worked with before. And it's turned into a great little project. I'd say a sort of an honourable mention goes to I got to work on a rugby pitch. I won't say which one, just in case they get a bit ashamed of what I'm about to say. But essentially, they built it on like a 3-time landfill site, and then sort of ploughed it down, built a factory, ploughed that down, built another factory. Yeah. And so the ground wasn't very stable. It was sinking in certain places. So we were probing to find these voids that they were then going to fill up with grout. And that was quite good because you're in a rugby stadium, although you're expected to be much more clean and tidy than you normally are. Yeah. It's just a great little venue because it's not a middle of a field. It's a stadium, it's much more interesting to look at. So I've done some fun projects, some in Wales as well, quite notably. Beautiful scenery when it's a nice day.
Yeah, 100%. It's often raining, isn't it? Let's be honest, in Wales. When you go on holidays there, it's often
That's what makes you appreciate the nice days.
It does. And of course, you can always break out the ball games and drive yourselves mad with that instead.
Hey, that's it.
So when you come back, obviously we were discussing in terms of what sort of companies to approach on your behalf, really, and where you should be kind of going in your career. So ground investigations, why particularly sort of ground investigations, not anything to do with perhaps mineral exploration, petroleum geology, or any of the other sort of facets of it?
For me personally, it just feels like a good place to start. Mm-hmm. You're flexing your fingers. You're doing a lot of the stuff that you've done at university. You're looking at a lot of material that you've looked at in university. And you're just getting stuck in. You're learning how the industry works. And it is no secret that going to university for 4 years does shelter you from a workplace environment. Academia is not in the field. There's no comparison, really. Yeah. And some particular drillers, these lads are coming out of university, coming out of education at like 16 years old, straight into drilling, They're learning the basics of it. The second man in for 4 or 5 years, and then they're jumping on lead driller. Yeah, they've got way more experience than you at university, and you do feel that kind of stigma of like, I've been at uni 4 years, I'm above you. No, you're not. You're not. And if you're gonna go in there with that attitude, you're gonna get humbled very quickly, or you're gonna get upset. You're gonna have conflict. So you coming into ground investigation, you are making up for not lost time, but you're filling in the gaps of where you could have been if you didn't go into academia. So I don't really have some big stoic or lovely answer to say that ground investigation is the best in the world. For me personally, I see it's a great place to start. Fun, you're doing you're doing the same job in different areas, and sometimes it's not even the same job. You're tweaking little bits here and there, and it's very fresh in terms of a job. It doesn't feel like you're doing the same thing every single day. For me, and I suppose in another way, job security, particularly in the UK, UK is not really known for mineral mining and whatnot as other countries around the world is, but the UK is a great country for ground investigation, I believe, just with the amounts of work and particularly security. And again, I think Scarlett was, I keep referencing Scarlett because it was the most recent one I listened to. She was referencing how working for a company gives you that security. And I think ground investigation, if you're working for a company on a salary basis, that is some good security in terms of finances goes. So I think there's a lot of benefits for ground investigation.
So you mentioned about the drillers. So to mention one point, so I did actually a LinkedIn post a while ago asking if there actually is any female drillers in the UK. And I did have a couple of responses saying that there are. I've never seen one on site. I mean, if anyone knows one that's happy to come on a podcast, please feel free to let them get in touch with myself, because there are some out there from what people have told me. But when you mentioned about, you as a graduate, you've come out of university, you've got a driller there with 25 years experience, you've got a client you have to keep happy as well, and they're saying, can't you just go down a little bit more? And you say, can't you just go down a little bit more? And he or she is telling you no, and you're thinking, I don't know what's right here, I don't know what and you're like,
it happens.
And that's when imposter syndrome comes in, I think, for that point.
Definitely.
He's like, who the hell am I to tell you to go down another half for me?
Right. Yeah, exactly. you've been doing this job a quarter of a century, and I've been here. I've been here less months than you've been here years, and I'm telling you what to do. No chance.
Yeah.
100% that happens. I've had it on this job. Our specification said if you get less than 90% recovery, 80% recovery, it's an SPT and continue on a shorter run length. And sure, we do the SPT, no problem. But it was my driller who just had this intuition. He was like, look, I can drop down to a meter, but I reckon if I do 1.5 meters now, I'll get full recovery. Yeah. Just how the ground works, it was one of them sort of weird transitionary weathered mudstones that kind of lasts a significant amount of time before you really hit the rock. A lot of water moving through it, so various stages of weathering. And I just thought, like, look, I know my spec says this. Maybe I shouldn't be admitting this on air that I'm happy to go against the spec, but I'm also happy to trust my driller. And when my driller, shout out to John and Josh at JS Drilling, when he had the intuition to go and do that 1.5 meters, he did it, got the 1.5 meters out, 100% recovery, you know, even with the SPT at the beginning, we got 100%. And he just knew it. He knew it right there and then. And as I said, that's what a quarter of a century's worth of drilling experience will teach you compared to somebody with a specification who's never drilled on that site or ever probably in their life. So sometimes, you got to give it to the drillers like it's an art form. They are literally doing a job that they cannot see happening. They're doing it blind, and it's all to do with feeling, touch, muscle memory, and all that. So if you trust your drillers and they're coming at you with that sense of certainty, you're going to do well. But again, try and stay positive. Sometimes you got to remind them. It's like this, please will you do that? And generally, if you're pleasing your thank yous and all that, everyone's going to get on happily.
Yeah, no, you have to treat people as you expect to be treated, don't you? And I've known probably one engineer who just kind of rocked up to site straight from university, a few months experience, and it's just, I think he thought that these drillers were going to, take the mick out of him, so he was just being really blunt and like, no, you're going to do this, and they're like, oh, is that going to work out for you? I'm not so sure.
It's not going to work out. They're going to find a way around you. They're going to get you. No. Yeah, you got to be humble. You got to be assertive and humble. I'd say both those words, and although they're quite juxtaposing, it can be done, and it won't come instantly. I'm still not great at it, but I'm getting there. I feel it. I get on better with them, especially once you get to know them. If they've come from another job and you've seen them before, and it's like, oh, it's you. Yeah. Do you remember we did the job in Leeds or something? Yeah. You're building that familiarity. It's a small industry. I think everyone who's come on your podcast has said that. It's a small world. We all know each other. Even people you've never met in person. I've actually never met you in person, Michael, but I know you. So you will get to hear names, and people will definitely get to hear your name. But that be for better or for worse. And I hope people know my name for good.
No, that's a good point. Yeah, for good or for worse, they will get to hear your name. You will likely see them at some stage. If you mistreat someone,
you definitely are.
You'll probably be, your project manager or maybe your driller next time. So it will come back at you. So treat people as you expect to be treated. You don't think more. I suppose even if you do, you have to play it well. I mean, you can't just be rude and abrupt. Maybe it's required very occasionally if someone's just trying to try on, and some people are out there, whether that's drillers or engineers, who are certainly,
we're both as guilty as each other.
Exactly. So what would you say is your favorite activity on site? Is it logging rock? Is it logging soil? What is your...
my favorite activity?
If you
organize, just setting up the job, organizing and planning it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's good. Making sure the deliveries are here. Have we got the Harris in there? Have we got the Scape? When's our drilling supplies delivery due? When are the drills turning up? And you make your own little head catalogue and timetable of everything's going down. I like that bit. Maybe that's not the right answer for a ground investigation podcast, but I do like it. I wouldn't be lying, and everyone who knows me knows I like it too. So I can't hide that at all.
No, that's fine. So you like the organisational side, and ground investigation certainly needs good organisation. Otherwise, drill rig not turn up or turn up late, can have large cost impacts for everyone, and it can be a huge problem, especially if it's on short
Certainly.
job, which I've been on many times.
Well, even if it's on a big job, like
a day later, and then it's it throws everything off, and someone eventually has to pay for that. In terms of mentoring, do you have anyone that you kind of use to mentor yourself, whether within the company, whether contractors, and anything like that at all? Because it's quite important.
100%, 100%. I was very fortunate. I work with, I'd say there's probably three standout. That would be Max Charlottes, who's currently my supervising engineer. Taught me a lot about the rail work and helped me out when I'm in a pickle and things like that. Always keeps his phone on him. Many thanks on that to Max. Andy Waterhouse, subby engineer, who taught me a lot on my call logging and organising and trial pitting and whatnot. We had a big job together in his hometown of Sheffield, and that was good to sit on. Like we have our differences, myself and Andy, but we can have a good laugh at the end, and we got the job done, and we all walked off smiling. Big show. Tom Lloyd as well, another subby contract engineer from Merseyside, where I was with Tom sort of my first few weeks on site. We did quite a few sewage treatment works together, and Tom took me from this slightly obnoxious graduate, just fresh from abroad, and showed me how the site works. So now I'm a slightly more informed, obnoxious graduate. And I have, the three of them really did help me out. But almost everybody at my company has taught me some bits here and there. So, thanks to everyone for that one. I feel like I'm winning the Oscars here, Michael. It's great.
You are. Right, well, Ed Martindale, this has been your life. Thank you very much for coming on the Ground Investigation podcast.
Thank you.
I mean, it'll be especially good for graduates to hear about your experience, etc. so far. And of course, you've led quite an interesting life so far. We've sort of going up to China, you've joined lots of clubs, associations, Popcorn Club. You're not the standard person. I don't think you'd be offended to hear. So I think you've done a lot of good things, and I think your future is going to be very bright.
Thank you, mate. Thank you, Michael. And on a really positive note, I've known you now for about a year and a half. I think we're coming on to now, and you've always done right by me. And I think what you're doing with this podcast, it's the right way to do it. It's you're getting people like myself who would very, very rarely have the opportunity to have their say and to talk about it. And it's a very niche podcast, but also listening to it, you do feel that familiarity. It's like, yeah, I did that. I know what that guy's talking about. I know what that lady's on about. So I think what you're doing is going to get bigger. It's going to be great. And anybody out there who was a graduate like myself, I know what it feels like when you got that imposter syndrome and it's scary and everything. Use people like Michael, use groups like the AAPG, reach out, take that first step, and everyone appreciates that first step being done. If you come up to Michael and you say, I want a job, I don't know how to do this, people like him will take you through those first few steps, and it's going to be you. It's lead the horse to water, so to speak. But that doesn't mean you have to do it on your own. There's plenty of help out there. You've just got to go and get it.